Hello, everybody. Hope everyone is doing well out there today. I have decided something interesting and different and unexpected for today. So I was looking over our schedule as it sits now for our Zoom classes and our YouTube classes, in addition to the ones that they're offering at the center. And I realized something silly. I realized that we are doing a lot of journaling on Zoom classes as well. So I thought it would probably be a better use of our time to work on something else in creative writing. So I have decided a new schedule for this first week, and I will see how it goes, and we'll readjust if we feel like we need to. But instead of doing journaling on Thursdays, I'm going to make Thursdays all about poetry. And I will keep Wednesdays, like it was yesterday, focused on fiction. Okay? So a few things so that's the new plan. Looks like you guys are getting plenty of journaling done on Zoom multiple days a week. So it would be kind of silly, I think, to repeat ourselves that much. Plus, I was also thinking about the act of journaling. And journaling is a very personal thing, and it should be. Kind of like keeping a diary. You should feel free when you are journaling to talk about the things that maybe you don't talk about with anybody else in your journals. I keep multiple journals myself on different ideas. And I thought it would be kind of one-sided and a little bit focused on me if I were to talk about journaling and then share my journaling. Sometimes I probably would write some things that I would not want to share, as I imagine that many of you do when you are journaling as well. So I thought it would be much more advantageous for us to work on our creative writing poetry skills every Thursday. So that brings us to today's class. I think that we should do a class on this was my idea for today, and I'll tell you how I got there, and then I'll share what I wrote with you guys. My idea today is that we explore a open-ended question. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I will tell you. An open-ended question is something that doesn't necessarily have an easy answer or any answer at all, perhaps. So, for example, now I'm completely blank because I'm improvising here, you guys. Without giving away my question that I came up with, which I think is pretty darn good for today. I think other examples of open-ended questions could be something like, where does the wind come from? Or how many stars are in the galaxy? These are questions that actually probably have very scientific answers, but I don't know why I just put scientific in quotes. I'm sure that both of those questions have direct scientific answers, but inside of a poetry class, that could be a very interesting question to explore because we're trying to come up with creative answers. That's what creative writing is all about. So I was thinking that it would be fun to work through a question and to start our poems with our question. okay? And then instead of trying to answer that question directly, okay, we could get creative with our answers. So I explored the idea of a simile. Similes are comparing something like something else. And metaphors and similes are like friends inside of creative writing world. And metaphors are saying that something is something else directly. For example, I could say the taste of this vitamin water is like a cool summer day. That would be an example of a simile. Or I could say that the taste of this vitamin water is a hurricane. That would be more of a metaphor. Okay. Now, is the taste of this vitamin water either of those things in real life? Certainly not. But poetry invites us to be more creative with our explanations of everyday life. So that now that I have spoken about this vitamin water, I'm going to have a little bit because I just took a long bike ride before this and I need to replenish my electrolytes, you guys. So hold on one second. Oh, it is a hurricane and a cool summer's day. Whatever a cool summer's day is. We don't get many of those in Chico. I used to enjoy them in back east. Okay, so today's poem that I selected what I thought was an interesting question. And I would encourage all of you to write your own poem with this same opening question, if you like this question. If you don't like this question, guess what? You can make up your own, okay? It is just important that it be a question that you cannot answer easily. Or maybe if it is a question that you can answer easily, let's try to be more creative with our answers inside of our poems, okay? So today's question, sorry, I just blinked something into my eye. Okay, so today's question that I chose to pose to myself and to all of you out there who are watching, maybe watching at some point, is how does one know what they know? If we were in class together, I would hopefully see lots of wheels turning on all of your faces. Okay, so let me review today's question to get us started on writing a piece of poetry is how does one know what they know? Interesting. Okay, so there is our question. Now, the way that you choose to explain that answer to that question should be creative. What do I mean by that? I mean that you should seek to try to answer this question in a way that is not obvious, that is a little bit more fun, a little bit more exciting, a little bit more like I was talking about in fiction class yesterday, like painting a picture for your audience member, okay? So I started thinking about the brain, okay? Because this question is very much about our thoughts, how do we know what we know? Or the actual phrasing is, how does one know what they know? But to phrase it another way, or just simply, is, how do we know what we know? I have several things that I think I know. I think I know them pretty good, you know? And there are moments in life where something happens and all of a sudden your perspective gets changed. And the things that you thought you knew, perhaps you no longer know, or now you know them differently. Okay? And so I was interested in writing a piece of poetry about this concept of, what is it that is going on up here in this brain, this magnificent thing that we all have, when we know what it is that we know. For example, I know a fair amount about music. I love music. I play music. I listen to a lot of music. And I still have so much to learn. Every time I have a conversation with Michael Bone, I've discovered there are wonderful connections to be made that I haven't even thought of yet about music. I feel like I know a lot more about theater, okay, because I've studied theater since high school, and then into college, and then into graduate school. And I've done a lot of it. So I've learned a lot through experience as well. And I also realized that there are so many different types of theater and different ways of making theater that I still don't know anything about. For example, I never really explored musical theater very much. But that is a very unique and specific art form within the umbrella of theater. So to say that I know what I know about theater would not be that I know everything about it, because there's tons of stuff I don't know about theater. But the things that I do know, I feel pretty confident that I know. So this is kind of where my beginning of writing this piece of poetry started. I'm trying to give you guys a little bit of a glimpse into my thought process. So I came up with this question first. And it didn't take me very long. It just kind of was one of the first open-ended questions I came up with today that I liked. And sometimes you get lucky like that when you start thinking about these kinds of things. And I think I got pretty lucky on this one. And then I started thinking about describing the sensation of knowing what you know. And the way that I chose to describe it kind of surprised me. I was not really trying. I wasn't trying to steer the car too much on this one. I kind of posed the question, and then ideas started showing up in my head. So I am going to read you guys my my poem for today. I just have one poem, and it's not very long. It's only a few. Let's see, including the question. It is only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines long, and they're not even full lines. Another thing I like to do when I'm writing poetry is when I get an idea out, whether it be a long idea or a short idea on the page I'm talking about, I like to go down to the next line and start my another idea on its own line. And I work down the page like that, so you can see roughly how I like to frame it out. So I'm going to read you guys my poem first, and then I'm going to do just like what I did with my fiction. I'm going to kind of dissect it line by line and try to help you guys get into my creative space and just share with you a little bit of my process and how my brain works. And which is kind of interesting because this whole poem is about how each of our brains works. Okay, so without further ado, here it comes. How does one know what they know? Does it land in your head like a mosquito on a lake? Or does it seep up from below like a river about to overflow? Has it been there all along, just waiting on a change of the guards? It's all about timing and patience to pull off the perfect escape. Okay. I'm already getting more ideas about where this poem could go beyond this, and this is a huge part of writing, you guys. I'm gonna completely misquote one of my favorite quotes, but I believe this is by Vincent van Gogh, the famous painter, and I'm going to paraphrase this quote, but he is recorded having said, "A work of art is never complete. It's only abandoned." And I've always thought that that was a really interesting quote, meaning that even Vincent van Gogh, one of the most famous painters of all time and most celebrated, I would say, didn't feel like he was always done as much as he had to move on to the next piece of art. And I often feel that way about everything that I write. I get to a point where I feel like it's sort of done in the moment, and then when I go back to it later, I find myself immediately trying to rewrite it again. And sometimes I let myself rewrite it again because I've got some better ideas that are coming up immediately. But other times I really, really try to fight that impulse and just let the piece of writing be what it was on that day. So this piece of poetry, let's go through it together, and I'll try to explain how I came up with this little piece of poetry. How does one know what they know? So I think I've covered that pretty well. And then I even shared with you guys that I started thinking immediately about describing or painting the picture of what is going on inside someone's brain when they feel like they not only know something, but that they know it, which is a very, very different thing from just knowing something. A lot of people know a lot of things about life. And then if you ask them something that they know, they might recoil from that question. They might not feel comfortable saying, or they might immediately start doubting themselves about, well, I thought I knew it when it was just me thinking about it, but now that somebody else is asking me, I'm not sure that I do know, which is kind of very much about human nature. So I was trying to paint this picture of that moment when you realize not only that you know something, but you sort of, what's a good phrase? You are at peace with knowing it, which I think is kind of what the question is getting at. When you know that you know something, you don't have to worry about it as much, and you can feel confident in yourself, which I see happen with many of you. So in trying to paint that picture, this is where I was not expecting to be writing about mosquitoes and lakes But since I went camping not too long ago, I wasn't near a lake, but I was near a river that had several mosquitoes. And I saw a spot in the river that was kind of stagnant, which means there wasn't flowing water going through that little spot in the river. And I saw mosquitoes landing in that area that was stagnant. And I imagine they were going to probably make more mosquitoes. And the way that I saw the mosquito come down and land in this tiny little spot of the river that wasn't moving very much made me think about, man, how does the mosquito know that part of the river, I mean, this could be very dangerous water for a mosquito who's trying to land someplace safe and make more mosquitoes. And I just thought, you know what? That mosquito is probably not thinking about it. They just know. They just know that they sense that they have found a spot that is calm, that will be a good ground, or not ground, but a good area in the water for them to reproduce. And so that's where this line, does it land in your head? So I'm kind of imagining the water is our brains, okay? And the mosquito is the idea of knowing that you know something. And when that mosquito came in and landed just in that perfect spot, I thought, oh, okay, maybe there's a similarity there. So that's why I wrote this next line. Does it land in your head like a mosquito on a lake? And I thought a lake would be even calmer than a river. So that's why I changed it. And now I'm continuing the water theme. So I initially posed a very, very sort of abstract question, and then I got very specific and painting this picture of a mosquito landing calmly on a lake. And then I thought, well, if that mosquito is coming down and landing on our lake, what would be the opposite of that? Something coming up. But I still had water on my mind. And that's where my second line came from. Or does it seep up from below? So I'm thinking about water again as our brains, like a river about to overflow. Now here, I ended up using a rhyme, which I love to use in poetry, but is not necessary. You don't have to make every other line rhyme or impose a rhyme scheme at all. I really want to invite all of you to feel free to rhyme whenever you feel like it, and also not rhyme whenever you feel like it. So, does it land on your head like a mosquito on a lake? Those two lines don't rhyme, but the next two do. Or does it seep up from below like a river about to overflow? And my thought here was that a river that overflows has too much water. It has too much of what it needs, of what it actually is. A river is made up of water, and sometimes rivers have too much of what they actually are. And I feel like there's some sort of connection there with knowing that you know something. It fills up your brain in a delightful way and almost makes it feel like it's about to overflow when you start realizing that you not only know something, but that you're confident that you know that something. So that's where my second line came from. And then I shifted my imagery completely. Okay, so I got away from water and I started thinking about being an idea being trapped in your mind. And you might know that idea, but it's not until that idea doesn't feel trapped in your mind that you feel like you know it. Okay? I know I'm talking about abstract ideas today, you guys, in this piece of poetry, but that's what a lot of poetry explores, is abstract things, things that are not very easy to pin down. Okay? So then I started thinking about an idea being trapped in the mind, and I immediately started thinking about a prison setting. Okay, probably because I just watched a very good movie called Just Mercy, all about a person that was wrongfully put in prison. So that was probably on my mind a little bit because I watched that a couple days ago. So that's where my last 4 lines really came from, this idea. And those lines are, has it been there all along, just waiting on a changing of the guards? Now, when I was a young kid, I really liked the films of Clint Eastwood. And and so did my dad too. What am I saying? My dad introduced me to the films of Clint Eastwood. And one of my favoriteest films was a film called Escape from Alcatraz, where Clint Eastwood breaks out of prison, and one of the toughest prisons in the world, supposedly at the time, to break out of. And so I started thinking about this idea of the idea getting trapped in one's mind, the prisons of one's mind, and not being able to get out and really embrace the fact that it knows, that you know something. So that's where I started exploring this simile, if you will, or this metaphor. Has it been there all along, just waiting on a changing of the guards, which is something that Clint Eastwood did in Escape from Alcatraz. It's all about timing and patience to pull off the perfect escape. So here, I'm pulling a lot from a very fond childhood memory of mine about a movie that has nothing to do with creative writing or knowing what you know per se, but I pulled from that experience and from something that I really liked, and I tried to paint the picture of knowing an idea with this sort of background, or this scene, if you will, about trying to escape from the prison of one's mind. So there you have it, you guys. That is my best idea. It's pretty tricky to try to explain poetry because poetry is really meant to be read and to excite your mind. And just because I have some ideas about how I got where I got does not mean that my poem means this exactly, and whatever you started thinking about is wrong. Okay? I want to be very clear on that too. Just like songs, poetry is meant to be interpreted by its reader. And the reader, that person being you today, gets to decide what this piece of poetry means too. Okay? So the author might have an idea of what they think it means, but a piece of poetry, just like a song, is supposed to live in the reader's mind, excite the reader's mind, and make them think of different things that are that they think it means. So anyway, that concludes our poetry lesson for today. I hope that each of you that watch this take a moment, take about 5 minutes if you can, with a blank piece of paper, and sit down and write this question. How does one know what they know? Okay? And then write a piece of poetry as long as you want or as short as you want about that question and trying to figure out that question for yourselves. Okay, you guys. Well, I will see you all again next week on Wednesday. and on Thursday at 1 p.m. On Wednesdays, we'll do fiction writing, short stories, and that kind of stuff. And on Thursdays, we'll do poetry. All right, guys. I hope y'all are well, and I hope y'all are staying safe.